Hello, good morning to all of my cute viewers today. I decided to do a different intro for fun. But anyway, today we're going to Today we're going to do a different type of video. So we're gonna talk about drafting a little bit, especially from the perspective of Evelynn. So what you should avoid, when you should try to pick it, and so on. So this is gonna be pretty solo queue focused, and you can apply this to other champs. It's going to be the same concepts, but I'm going to explain it on the example of Evelynn. So firstly, obviously, as Evelynn, we would highly prefer to always pick on 4th or 5th pick. That is because then we can actually decide what our comp is like and what enemy comp is like, and enemy can't counterpick us. Because if we get heavily counterpicked, then we have some pretty big issues. But in solo queue, you're going to end up picking on the first 3 picks a decent amount of the time, which is also okay, because your top laner is going to just cry if he doesn't get last pick, and your mid laner is probably going to cry if he doesn't get 4th pick. So 3rd pick is probably going to have to be what you settle for a lot of the time, but if you can get like 4th or 5th, then it would be pretty good as well. So okay, what are the things we really need to look out for, right? So there is the obvious one where we want damage types, right? So Evelynn, Cortis, stuff like this, these are champions that want to be solo AP. So what do I mean when I say solo AP? Let's just put Evelynn here so that it's sorted by role. Alright, so let's say that we picked AP mid laner, right? So like AP tank type mid laner. And we picked like a support. And then we picked where is she? Okay, then we picked like Kaisa. And then we pick like Malphite, right? Okay, like this is absolutely horrible. Okay, now let's change this up a little bit, right? Let's say that we have an AD mid laner, right? The last draft is obviously horrible because you have 0 AD damage in your team. But let's say now we suddenly have like an AD mid laner, right? Do you think that this draft is fine for Evelynn? I mean, sure, you can play it if you want, but the issue is this guy only does magic damage. Like, so you can just count him as AP. There is no reason to count him as AD because he only does magic damage. This guy will do like some percentage of his damage in magic, so some percentage, whatever that may be. It's going to be below 50%, but still, it's going to be some percentage. And this guy will only do magic damage as well. So you basically have 3 magic damage champions in your team and 2 AD ones, where one of them isn't even full AD. So at this point, it's still problematic, right? Now let's replace these champions and let's say something a bit different, right? So let's say that we put in Galio again. So we have like an AP tank type mid laner. Okay, whatever. And then let's put in like Darius or something, right? And then we can put in like a Draven, right? Now at this point, almost no matter what the support picks, it will be fine. Because you have 2 champions that are heavily focused on doing AD damage, right? And one that's not focused on doing damage as AP. So this is also a distinction. Like, does my AP champion in my team want to do damage, or does it want to be a supportive type champ? But now you have to make sure that your support also picks a supportive type champ, because if he picks a mage, then you're gonna be in a pretty similar position as the one shown previously. So preferably he would pick something like let's say, I don't know, let's just say that he would pick like Thresh or something, I don't know, or Nautilus. Okay, so this would be a pretty decent comp for you to play in. And you can replace Galio with something like Lysandra as well or something. That's all fine and dandy. As long as it's not like a Cortis mid lane or something, even then you can play it, it's fine. Like, basically no matter what this pick is, you can play it at this point, because you have 2 like really hard AD champs, and the draft is like just good for you. So this is what I mean with damage types. So we want champions. The best thing that we can possibly get is champions that suit us, like Darius, that like to split push, that can fight as well, that can take a lot of aggro from the enemy team, and do 80 damage. Then the same kind of thing is in mid lane. Like let's say like this one is usually like the best one, Kiana. And then in bot lane we would prefer something that's like safer, but there's a lot of AD damage, right? So maybe something like a Xayah, maybe, I don't know. And then for our support, we would prefer something that can just roam for us or whatever. Like let's say like a good pike would be really insane. So this comp would be like really insane for us because this is a like the ideal for top lane. So we want a split pusher who can just like also team fight. Then this is like pretty much ideal for mid lane because we want something that can set us up really well, that's going to be useful no matter what, that can team fight pretty well, but can also skirmish really well. So that's like our ideal mid laner. Then our support is something that we want to have 80 damage, set up, and to be able to roam. So pretty much ideal as well. And our ADC, we want something that is going to do a lot of 80 damage, that's going to scale well, team fight well, and it's going to be able to survive pretty well, so play like pretty safe in lanes and stuff, right? So these are kind of our ideal drafts, right? But what do we not like so much? So what we don't like so much, not ideal, is these champs like suddenly like AP, right? Like this champ is like a half, right? So he does do kind of what we like, right? So he can roam for us and stuff like that, and he's pretty good in team fights, but he's AP, so he's kind of like a halfway there. Then if we went for a top laner that we don't like, let's try to find one with an opposite thematic from why we don't like the mid laner. So now we have where is it, man? Oh yeah, let's say that we have an AD Kayle top lane. So that's like fine in terms of the damage type, like AD. I mean, we can also pick something else. Just pick some. Oh yeah, let's go Vayne, right? So in terms of damage type, this would be fine. You would also say, well, yeah, she can split push and she can team fight pretty well, but this one has the issue of being too reliant on her jungler, right? So she needs me to give her stuff, but I don't want to give her anything, so issue, right? And then lastly, we're gonna pick some ADC that just doesn't offer us much despite being pretty decent ADC, right? So maybe something like Samira, right? So while Samira is like fine for us, the problem is that we don't really want to help her and we don't really want to play for her or be forced to play for her. So then even if we do have something like this, right? Like this draft is fine, but we would highly prefer to just swap something out, right? Like Vayne, swap out. Or just make this like an ultra safe bot lane and then we can maybe try to play for top lane, right? Because like this, we're not gonna play for both and one is sure to lose. But this draft isn't so bad, it's just examples of stuff that we don't like so much. But it's like 50-50, you know, like somewhat like, somewhat don't. Then there are champions that we don't really like having in our team. And so these champions would be pretty heavy AP champions, right? Or champions that just don't like to do what we want them to do. So let me think just a little bit. Oh yeah, stuff like this in top lane. Or honestly, we can just say like this. Okay, so let's just use these two as examples, right? So this one is really heavy AP, even though thematically he is fine for us, right? He's just really heavy AP, so we don't like it. And this one is technically fine in terms of damage type, but the way that he plays thematically is just bad for us, because this guy will like suicide, this guy will die a lot, whatever. We can't really help him, and when he suicides, we don't really get that much value from it, and we would prefer a side laner that can like fight, because then we can shadow them and actually threaten to turn the fight. Or if we team fight, then we also want them to have like pressure, but this guy doesn't have either one of those really. So That's like champs we don't really like. But then after that, what happens is we also have some champions that we just absolutely despise. Like, we despise having stuff like this in our team, or like this. Just absolute horrible. Absolutely horrible. Then like this, and let's say like this is like a nightmare draft. Complete nightmare draft. Like, heavy AP, heavy useless, does nothing, wants help. Like, completely horrible. This thing is even worse. At least this one auto scales with levels. This one needs help, like, really badly, and this guy, like, really needs gold. And we're just like, well, we don't want to give anything, and we want to have everything on ourselves. But the enemy's just going full MR, so he's even more useless, and then you're just like, well, shit. And then you're like, why did we pick AP bot lane? Then you're like, why do we have Senna support? What am I supposed to do with that? And it's just all completely useless, right? So these are like examples of champs we like, champs we don't like, and somewhat explaining damage types. Then we have the actual drafts of the enemies, right? So what the enemy team can pick that makes it really awkward for us to play. So for example, champs like this, let's say, let's just put this one here. Okay, so champs like these have an issue for us where they're really strong against melee to short range champs, and we're always melee or short range. So this is just horrible for us. Meanwhile, there are champs that are long range, right? That are not so bad for us. We're doing pretty badly into champs that are complete melee a lot of the time, because those champs have a lot of tools to deal with us, while champs that are more made for range don't have so many tools to deal with us, like say, I don't know, this, and like this, and where is it, man? I don't know, like this. Like, these champs can be annoying because of the way that they play at range and whatever, but they don't have as many tools to deal with us, which makes it a lot easier to play, right? So these types of champs, especially when champs are like naturally tanky and stuff, they completely counter our champ. So that's something to look out for. There's also obviously some thematic champs that just have certain spells or gameplay gimmicks that make it really unplayable for us. So let's say like this, and then stuff like this, and I don't know, like this, right? So again, these champs are pretty low range, and then this one just has like a gimmick that is really annoying for us. Same thing if I replace it with this. So these are things to kind of look out for, right? Like this one isn't even no range. And wait, where's the last one? Oh no, let's put Annie here. Like, some of these champs can even be ranged or like medium range or whatever, but they will still have gameplay gimmicks that just make it really impossible to play. There's also like Malzahar and stuff like that, and Cassio. But most of the time, the champs are going to be the most annoying for Evelynn in terms of if the enemy actually plays well and uses the tools in their kit, it's gonna end up being like short to mid-range champs, while the champs that are long range are going to be more manageable in a lot of situations. But if the enemy is playing bad actually, and how much outplay potential you have, is going to be kind of flipped, because you can't really outplay the long range champions so much, but these ones you can outplay if they play bad, right? Because the long range champions, like, they either just play bad and they die to you, or they don't, right? But these champs is kind of like, if they play bad, you can outplay them. If they don't play bad, you can't. But with the long range champs, there isn't even really an outplay there to begin with usually, because they just right click on you usually. Okay, so then we have power spike times as another concept. So when is the enemy team coming online, right? Like, if the enemy team is playing stuff like this, 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 this. Oh no, let's say Zaya, where is she? Something like this, right? Like, this is really terrifying because you're going to end up in a position where how are you going to win the game before 20 minutes is Evelynn? Like, you need your laners to do stuff, but you yourself cannot win this game before 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, this game is going to be really unplayable if the game is even close, right? So, when you play against these champions that spike in mid to late game, it can be really awkward because you don't really do much early. So, if your team doesn't also spike in mid to late game, then you're gonna end up in a bad position where the enemy has like 3, 4, 5 champions that spike in mid to late game, and in your team it's just you. So now you have to outperform like 3, 4, 5 players, right? Obviously, if you have like champs in your team that can also do that, then okay, sure. Then it's just like kind of a scale war or whatever else. But this is an example of stuff that you need to avoid really badly. Obviously, the opposite can also hold true. So maybe they play like champs that just completely take away all impact from you, right? So let's say some draft like this, and then I don't know, let's say this, and then let's say something like this, right? Like, basically, no matter what your team drafts at this point, you're not gonna have much impact in this game. Either the enemy team will win the game before 20 minutes, or they won't, and you'll probably win yourself. So this is not really a game where you can have impact, right? So these patterns end up emerging where there are comps that just outscale you and your team, and then there are comps where you cannot do anything because your champion just doesn't do much early, right? So you have to identify when you can do stuff, and can you actually compete with the enemy at that point, right? Like, is that good enough for you to try to win? So to play for a win. Then after that, I kind of want to talk about the thing that people talk about often as archetypes or colors or whatever else, right? So let's just use colors, I guess, because that's what's most known in League community, I think. So you have like red and blue and green and white and whatever else, right? And the idea is kind of like that white are adaptable. So say something like this champ, like you would pick it early and then you would end up being able to pivot into whatever you want to draft, right? Then this champ is like a multi-flex, so it can be picked with fasting Senna, picked in jungle, picked in top, whatever. Then you would have champs that are like committal, so maybe you pick like Draven, Nautilus, right? At this point, and that is pretty committal as to what you're going to try to do as a comp. And then usually people will end up mismatching some champs with what their comp is trying to do, right? So like right here, some people will pick Kassadin, and while it's fine, and it's not even bad here, like it's not bad, it's just that it's kind of a mismatch with what your comp is trying to do. But there are obviously worse picks I could think of. So let's say something like Zoe. Like Zoe makes quite little sense here. It's not too bad though, because either way, like an AP champ that just slots into mid lane here and has like really strong sides is never really gonna end up being too bad. But it just doesn't really make too much sense, right? So there are champs that will make more sense. So for example, you would draft something like this into a comp that doesn't have too much range and that's kind of trying to scale probably. So you would pick something like this maybe, and then instantly it's just like, well, melee champs legit cannot play the game, and you scale pretty well in topside, and yet you can snowball and it's just chill. So it is some kind of an idea. And for Evelynn, she is, oh yeah, also there's a black color, so conditional. So Evelynn is, I think, considered like black and some blue, so like control-y, scaling, whatever. And I think there was one other type, but I forgot what it was. I don't know. I think there was one more, but whatever, man. I remember I looked into it a while back, but I didn't really use this concept, so I don't remember what it was. Either way, this is going to also apply to quarters usually, so these two champions have like pretty similar overlap in terms of what they do and how they work and stuff and how they draft. Though obviously they will slot into different team comps better. But he's gonna end up being kind of weak to champions that are like Fred, aggressive, whatever you want to call them. And she will end up needing her teammates to support her against champions that are like kind of blue, so like trying to scale and whatever. But either way you can win, obviously, but again, like it's just different how you win. Like against red champs or these things, you try to win by like making as few errors as possible and just like outscaling them. While against the blue champs, you try to snowball, right? So it's kind of interesting. Right, so the last two things I really want to talk about are kind of considerations of win cons, which I've already talked about a decent amount. So like you want to have like one side of the map that you want to play to, right? So like in this case it would be like bot side, no matter what, pretty much. Like if your top laner Grief picks here and picks like Kai'Sa top or something, you just leave him on an island and you hope for the best. But most likely he will go like 0-10 on Kai'Sa top, but there's just no choice here because either your Kai'Sa goes 0-10 or your Draven goes 0-10, and either way it's gonna be pretty bad, but most likely it's gonna be better to play for bot lane anyway, so at that point you already decided. So that would be a drafting error from whoever picked last, like if the bot lane picked last or if the top lane picked last, but it's probably the top lane. So that's like something. And okay, the last thing that I want to talk about at all is just counters. So how bad are counters and what will really happen with them, right? So these champions that we don't really want to play against at all as Evelynn, what really will make it so they're that horrible? Okay, let's just put 3 champs and the other ones you can just stab to. So something like Rek'Sai, when do we not really want to play against Rek'Sai? It's not like always it's going to be horrible to play against it, right? But something like Rek'Sai, we're going to have an issue playing against this champ when he has some pretty strong laners, right? So he can do whatever he wants, and we can't really do much. But laners can also scale, can also be like decent. Like this can be okay, depending on what your mid laner picks. But I was thinking more in terms of something like, let's say that you have like this combo or something, right? Whenever Lissandra's decent. So at this point, this is like insane setup, insane 2v2, and also insane roaming. And then you have like side lanes that they can just play for, right? So like, let's just say that they have Samira, Nautilus, and I don't know, some random top laner, doesn't matter. Who cares? At this point, you kind of already know that pretty much no matter what your teammates pick, you're not going to have a good time as Evelynn. Like, I cannot think of a single champion draft, like, in these 3 slots that can hold this, right? In theory. Because pretty much no matter what, your mid laner shouldn't really be able to win against this before you scale up as Evelynn. And pretty much no matter what, you shouldn't be able to contest 3v3 or 4v4 or 3v4 or whatever in bot side. So this is pretty much just doomed, kinda. Right, thank you guys. And then we have like a similar scenario with Rengar, but the lanes are gonna end up being a bit different as to what he actually wants, right? And how he can abuse it. So with Rengar, the issue is that he perma beats you in like every fight, and he full heals every like combo you try to do, and he also one-shots you completely. So at this point, it's better for him if he either has really consistent laners, so ones that will just always do well, or if he has laners that will always prio. But stuff like this, like Xayah, is just good at both. And then maybe, I don't know, something like this that can just move for him, or even better, like this creature. Like laners like these will end up enabling him to kind of do what he wants, when he doesn't really have to enable them, because he doesn't have that good ganks. I mean, he has pretty good ganks in top and bot, kinda, from lane ganking, but otherwise his ganks aren't that amazing. I would prefer to counter gank on that champ. So then obviously the champs that can end up pushing and giving him prio so he can invade, or he can skirmish, or he can counter gank and stuff like that, are going to be what he's really looking for. And when he gets those champs, then it's going to be really unplayable for you in this specific matchup anyway. What was the last champ that I put there? I think it was like, it was Rengar, it was Rek'Sai, and it was one more. What was it? Oh yeah, Karthus. Right, so this is an interesting concept though. This is like when you play against another scaling champ and they kind of have like an advantage against you. The issue is that, okay, so now if either one of these gets like a full AD team and the other one gets like 2 or 3 AP, including themselves, then that one is automatically at a huge disadvantage. But let's say that they both got some kind of like okay draft, get draft, or let's say something like that. Then I don't know, let's say this guy has this and this guy has this, and okay, let's flip these actually, because I think, you know, let's put it like this, I guess. Then whatever in bot lane, right? Actually, I don't know, I guess I'll like put it there. Oh, let's put Nautilus here. Let's put like, oh, let's flip this like this. Okay, I guess something like this. These are like gonna be pretty decent drafts for both of them, because they kind of like, in these games they both want kind of the same thing, where they want to be solo AP, they want to have prio, and they want to have laners that can like support them in a way. They obviously will give something to the laners, but they won't give as much as like, I don't know, an Elise or something, right? Obviously. So then the issue is that if they both start topside, right, and the Karthus ever has any kind of prio here, then he will just invade and Evelynn at her blue. Even if he doesn't have prio, he will at least try to invade her, because there's no reason not to harass her. So Evelynn is going to get forced to start opposite sides from Karthus. But the issue is then that if she doesn't have strong enough laners in mid and top to like contest stuff, then she can still get invaded, like level 1 or whatever. I don't know. Let's say that. Like if her laners are way weaker, that can happen as well. She can also get invaded here, level 1. And okay, let's ignore that for now. But let's just say that they both are at opposite sides, and this is like the best case scenario for her, right? So at that point, you get to like the end of your clear, and the problem is, if you don't have a play and he does, it's just like doom. Kinda. Especially if like you get to the end of your clear and the enemy has like prio in every lane, but not gankable. Like this guy like crashes and bases, right? And he like pushed in. So now you're just playing with the whole map, it's just being like this. So Karthus can just do whatever he wants at any point. So these are like disaster games where the enemy picks something like this, like Karthus or Nidalee or whatever, and he can gank anything he wants. He can be solo AP. He can bully you as much as he wants and just do whatever he wants. So these are kind of like the ideas of counters for Evelynn. So the first one being the champs that are ganking a lot, with the probably one of the worst ones being Rek'Sai, where you will just have the map collapse before you can do stuff. The second type being stuff like Rengar, where you will be the one getting permanently bullied and you will not be able to make any plays. because he just beats you in every fight. Even if he's really bad at the game, he just beats you. And then lastly, we have these types of matchups where the enemy jungler can do kind of the same thing that you do, but he will just end up doing it better because of team drafts or whatever other reason, right? Like, this is also why I don't like these matchups like Echo or something, because you replace Coitus with Echo, it becomes less bad, obviously, than against Coitus in a lot of scenarios, but it's still the same issue, right? Like, if your laners draft like some random garbage now, where you can't really do anything with it, you're just like thinking, what the fuck do I do with this? Like, there's not much to do with that, my guy. Of course, Vladimir. It's fucking trash champ. Like, they draft this, you're just like, okay, well, I'm not solo AP, I have a bunch of AP, I don't have prio, I don't have setup, I don't have anything, and he has everything, and I'm just like, well, I guess he's gonna snowball and I lose the game, right? So, this should give you some level of insight into what to avoid when you're drafting as Evelynn, when you're trying to pick her and stuff like that, when you're deciding if you want to dodge games. And you can also apply this to other champs or other drafting or whatever. But this is kind of the general approach in terms of this champion. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, then like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.